Well, good morning, everybody. We're on our final two segments of this build-up for Control Line Craftsman. I got all the painting on and all the leaf on, and I showed you how to leaf and how to build this airplane. And if there's anything that I missed, you guys need to let me know. And now we're going to go for the inking, and this is kind of difficult to explain, but this is a fantasy airplane. It's not a real airplane, but you don't want to put on things that are out of place. Wendy talked about using a architect's template with toilet seats and windows and doors and things like that. Well, that's a good idea. We don't want to do that. But we want to make it look like a real airplane would look. So I have here a yardstick, steel yardstick, and it's got 4 layers or 5 layers of tape underneath it to hold the ruler up off the work. And the reason for that is the ink is so thin that it will wick up underneath the ruler. And we'll talk about pens and ink. I use the Continental Rapidograph pens and the Black India ink. It's Rapid Draw. The part number is 3064F, and the F stands for film. You have to have the ink for film, otherwise it won't work. Now I'm just cleaning off any of the glue gobbers or whatever on the side of my straight edge here. You want to make sure there's no bumps on it, because any of those bumps on the straight edge are going to translate into the line you're going to draw on the wing, and you don't want that. Now I have several aircraft books. You can find them online or whatever. I basically know what they look like, you know, what an aircraft wing looks like, where the ink lines go. First off, there's going to be a wide line down where the spar would go, and then the panel lines thereafter. Now, some guys do rivets. I don't like rivets on a airplane like this. First off, in the 60s and 70s, they didn't do much inking. I don't think this airplane had too much ink on it, just a few little small details. So we're not going to get too wild with inking. There's not going to be any ink on the fuselage. It's just too busy. And we're not going to get too wild on the wings either. Just a few accent lines and maybe some inspection hatches and things like that. Anyway, got a ruler here. And we're going to put this up here. Now, the camera's ahead of it, and I'm going to be drawing on the back side of the line for the simple fact I want to get this spacing from the blue exactly correct. But you'll get the idea. Next, I've got some 1/8" masking tape. Some guys use this to paint with. I don't. It's nowhere near as good as blue fine line. But we definitely can use this as bounding boxes for our inking, meaning that a line will go here, or we could even tape it and look and see what it would look like. A line would go here. We want a line on the wingtip. As I stated, this is not going to be a real elaborate inking job. Normally there's a panel in the center of the wing, so we'll have to figure the center, but I don't want to tape across the gold leaf here because it only has one airbrush coated clear on it, and I don't want a chance pulling the leaf up until we get some clear on it. I've been with the angled flaps, angling the first lines up to try to keep parallel with the flap curve, and then dropping down at the center line 1/4 of an inch and following that same angle out to the tip, meaning that it would simulate flaps and ailerons. And then there's a center line here. So that's what we're going to do. And then of course one line at the center running parallel where it would join on. Then we'll get a trim tab in the flap itself and maybe a trim tab in the aileron. And that's it. That's all we're going to do. Maybe an access hatch or something, but it's not going to be a lot. And there's not going to be any on the bottom. And the reason why it's not on the bottom is that it's black. It's black checkerboards, and the ink lines, and I don't have any white ink, and I would have to change every 2 inches, white to black every 2 inches. I just don't think it would look good. So this is a fantasy airplane. It's not scale, so we're just not going to worry about it. So anyway, you get the idea of where I'm going to go with this ink job. I'll take this tape off. I don't like tape on paint. Once it's taken up, leave it up. Otherwise, it'll pull your paint job up. Because as it dries, it gets real sticky. Like, it takes dynamite to get it off. So, let's get started. I take my straight edge, and we're going to lay it up here. And I'm going to tape it. Not that I want to, but it would help. And I'm going to relieve the stickiness some. I don't want this to move. We're not going to be coming out that far. So the first line I'm going to put on is the spar line, and I'm going to use a number 4120. That's a big thick line. Actually, maybe better put a thin line on it and see if that wouldn't look better. So we're going to use the .60, which is about half the width. About 1/8 of an inch from the from the red line on the fuselage, and it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but we're going to draw a line. And it doesn't want to seem to right. Well, let's try this, because if I don't like it, I can wipe it off with alcohol. I'm not going to mess with it. I see what it was. You want to push just hard enough to get the ink to come. You don't want to bear down because we're going across covering and cap strips. Now hold the pen straight up and down to the work. And that's our first line. Let it dry before you pick up the ruler, because you don't want a chance smudging it. And it smudges easy. And it's actually, people say easy to wipe up, but I don't think so. I think it's a little difficult. Get it going there. So that's our spar line. And we're going to need, oh, it's got a little, I got a little nick there. If you have a spot that happened to miss, come back with the small pen and fill it in. Don't try to come back with a big pen. So next we're going to, as I stated, come up from the flap. Let's see, we're going to come out, we got 7, so it's 1, 2, 3, 7, 3.5. Start about 1/4 inch from the bottom. Come up to there, and I'm going to use the small pen for the flap line. Let's see here. What would be best? We're going to have 2 lines there, so better do it one on each side of the ruler so they stay 100% parallel. 1, 2, 3, and right in the center there. So right to the center of the white is 10.5, 1/4 or 1/8 of an inch here. Can't tell if my pen's working or not. Most important thing in inking is don't get excited. Do 3, we're going to come out to 10.5. And do the bottom line, so that's at 270. You notice I did not move the ruler. That way the lines are absolutely perfectly parallel. Gently pick up the ruler. Now we have the flap line, and it'll get a perpendicular line this way. This line will only come down to the flap hinge. You don't want to come down, well, no, it'll come across the flap as well now that I think about it. So you kind of want to make, you kind of got to look at a real airplane. What does a real airplane do? In order to have a realistically laid out model, even though this is a fantasy airplane. So we're going to come across the flap. We'll go around the inside of the flap. When I take the flap off, then I'm not going to go across the gold leaf, because the gold leaf should have been painted on top of all the sheet metal. So we're just going to fill in between the ink lines on the gold leaf. Then up to the spar line. Now you can spend hours and hours and hours inking. There's no limit to the detail you can do. It doesn't add any weight. And as long as you don't go overboard, it kind of looks cool. So here we have the first panel in and the flap. I don't know if that'll show on the camera, but when I get it finished. I'll bring it around and show you the first lines that I did. Now we need to make ailerons, and what I found works best for ailerons, so we have we have to put a wingtip on it. So a wingtip bounding box, so to speak. So we'll do that first before I go any farther. We need a line on that. You come right to the end of your spar so you can get a nice clean corner. Make sure that it's at a 90 degrees to the spar, parallel to the wingtip plate, and I use the rib to index that, because hopefully I put the ribs in straight. Now it has a slight nib on it, and when that dries I'll come back with an X-Acto knife and knock that little corner off before you clear it. That way the corner's perfect. And I just freehand usually around the corner. I don't know any other way. If there's somebody out there who has a way to do it, some professional draftsman, please let me know. That turned out good. So now we got to freehand around this corner too. Right on the edge of the flaps is where I'm talking about freehanding around the corner to continue around to the other side. And fortunately I've laid this out so that this line runs into the black checkerboards on the bottom. Okay. So now we have the spar, the first inner panel, and the wingtip area, and we need to put in a flap. So what you can do is we'll measure up from the trailing edge. We want to split that by 1/2 inch. So you make a line 1/4 inch on each side of your first line. Make a mark. And that way come on. Our flap line is going to be 1/2 inch. Then you come up here, and I usually try to use widths of the ruler to try to keep things symmetrical. That way you don't make a mistake. So you come up here that much. Let's see how that's going to look. See, that's too much. So, or is it? Nope. One width of the ruler, we come up. And make a mark. And then we're going to measure down a 1/2 inch so that the lines stay parallel, and make another mark. Here again, there's 1,000 ways to do this. This is just my way. This is a corkback ruler, commercially available from Dick Blake, about 1,000 other art stores. To get my shorter one here. And a corkback ruler is just that. It has cork on the back, and it does the same thing that my masking tape does on the bottom of my yardstick. The only reason I use the yardstick is it's longer. 24 inches is the longest corkback ruler I have. I would imagine they make longer. But here's an 18. Make sure the edges are free of debris. And dust. Anyway, I'm going to put up the ruler on our marks. And probably should do the first one, the first mark in a we'll just go with this. I don't want to get too crazy on a classic airplane. So now we're going to make our next line. If the pen would write. Keep the pen straight up and down to the work. Does a couple of things for you. 3 things. The pen flows better, the line stays consistent, and you control it better. Even pressure, even speed, all the way out. So that's our second line, and make sure that it took, and it did. And now we'll come down to the bottom mark that we had. And that gives us a realistic, not really, but a simulated realistic aileron. There's a flap or a aileron sealing piece of metal in the wing that lets the flap articulate and still keep aerodynamic structure, and that's what this is simulating, this panel and this panel. And the actuators are underneath it. And there you have those two panel lines. We will probably continue on with a half one here, but I'm not sure. I have to set it on the ground and look at it. It'll get a panel up this way. Matter of fact, we can do that now. We'll split this panel into two areas. Matter of fact, we'll just do it this way. This is the spar, like a spar hatch or whatever. And I'm just running this ruler parallel with the spar here. I don't know what the heck, why the pen's clogging up. Back in '04, when I went to the World Championships and I looked at Billy's Thunderbolt, I made a compliment to him. It was the nicest inking job I had ever seen. Now, I'm not talking about the Razorback, the one he flies. I'm talking about the Lightning Bolt, the one that I copied. The ink job on that was absolutely perfect. I mean, I looked at it for several times for hours. I couldn't find any flaw in it. I'm sure they're there, I just couldn't find them. But, anyway, we have a basic outline here of the panels. We're going to put one line in the center of the wing here to where the wing would bolt onto the fuselage. And that's it. That's all we're getting on this classic airplane. I'm not going to go crazy. You could spend, you know, a lot of time inking on an airplane. But we're just going to finish this thing up. I'm going to try to get some clear on it today, even though it's snowing out. Now I had the .10 line, and it's got a couple of voids in it. So you come back with the small pen and fill in the voids. Do not try to do it with the big pen, because you'll have it everywhere. I have zoom eyes on too, so these are those, these are 4 power, but I have some 5 and 6 power now. But anyway, that's basically how I do ink. I'm going to copy this to the other side and kind of look around and see if I want to put any on the elevator. I'm not going to do any on the fuselage. It's just, your classic airplanes just didn't have much ink on them. So, I'll go ahead and cut the camera. We'll be back. I'll give you a little tour when I get it all done and kind of give you an idea exactly what I did. But you want to make sure, a couple of things. You want to make sure you tape the ruler down so it doesn't move. If you move the ruler, stop. Don't try to go back over that spot because it will leave a double line. You want to have reference points like I did here. Half of the center stripe, you know, 3 over. The width of the ruler. To keep everything symmetrical, use the, you know, measure and use the scale. And that way you'll have a, you know, a nice looking model. So I'm going to shut the camera. I'm going to finish up the other side today. And when I get that done, I'll set her down and pick up the camera and give you a little walk around of what the ink job looks like. But other than that, it's pretty much boring and repetition. Just do the same thing over and over again. So we'll see you in a bit. Okay, we're on the other side. I got to thinking, you know, while we're inking this, Wendy says one less is better than one too many. Well, my theory is one less is better than a mistake. So if you feel you're going to make a mistake, leave them off. So anyway, we're matching up the other side now. I got the ruler taped up here. Make sure it's correct. We got the wide line. Even pressure, perpendicular to the work. Make sure the pen's working, and it's not really working good. Got a problem with the bumps. This is representing the main spar of the airplane in a real airplane. And it does not run parallel with the spar of the airplane. It runs parallel to the trim line or parallel to the trailing edge. Is this the way a real airplane is? Well, I don't know. It depends on how the engineer designed it. Well, this is how our fantasy airplane is. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now we'll let it dry before I pick up the ruler because we don't want it to smudge. Dust on it. And that looks pretty good. That looks real good. So now we have to figure out where we are for our parallel line running down through. It's 1, 2, it's in the third stripe out in the center. So we go 1, 2, third stripe in the center right here. and we're going to run parallel down this way with a fine line. I just eyeball it. You know, some guys have to measure or whatever. If you have to measure, measure. If you can eyeball it, eyeball it. We are not building a watch. Why is this pen being so stubborn? I have an ultrasonic cleaner, and I cleaned all these pens before I started. And that's pretty parallel. By eye, I mean, if it looks good to your eye, what's the difference whether it's a few thousandths off? And I don't think it's off at all, but you'd have to get a calipers on it to check. And then we have a line at the tip that goes all the way across. And it probably could have come out one, but I didn't want to get too crazy with it. Remember, this is a classic model. I want to keep it simple. And I'll bet that I have more ink than the original on it. If I remember right, it just had some panel lines in the center and some ink lines inside the cockpit. But, as I told Gary Saunder, it's been 45 years since I've seen it. Oh, we didn't want to use that pad. That would have been a disaster. I had something happen here. I hate when it happens, but the ruler moved, so now I gotta eyeball that. Well, we pulled a rabbit. That turned out good. After this ink is on today, we'll get some clear on it to seal it. And I'm not sure how the weather's going to go. I don't have much retarder. So it could blush up, and I don't want to spray coat after coat if it's going to blush. So it might just hang on the wall until we get some decent weather. And I'll work on some other projects. Make sure you get on enrolled in our Build Along class. We're going to build a profile. I don't have a profile. I don't even have a profile engine, so I'm going to have to get one off eBay. And I don't know what I'm going to do about a profile, but we'll get something going. Anyway, the next thing to do is we'll go down the center section here with the line, and then we'll put the flaps on, and the top of the wing's done. That's it. I might put in a fuel hatch or an inspection panel, but as I said, it's not going to have much ink. So I'm going to cut the camera, take a break, and we'll be back. So see you in a short. This is the inking recap. This will be the last in the series of the ink. All that's left to do to this airplane is clear it. The weather outside's not very good, so we're kind of holding off on it. I'm going to clear it with a few coats of clear, probably 3. The nose will get 2-part urethane. The wheel pants will get 2-part urethane. And the cowl will get 2-part urethane. And the rest will be Randolph dope. I do have a couple more ink lines to put on, but I figured that I would, because I'm finishing up the video here, I would go ahead and shoot this one and edit it and post it up. It's my tribute to Tom Warden. It turned out really well. I like it. I hope that it's going to be light enough. It's at 49 3/4 ounces right now. I switched the propeller over to period correct. So 11.6 EW rev up propeller, Super Tiger 46, tongue muffler, 5.5 ounce tank. Came out real nice. Real happy with the turnout. Please stay tuned. We're getting ready to start our profile build. If you're not a member of Control Line Craftsman, you might want to do so now and get in on the class. It'll be an hour a day until the project's finished from beginning to end. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. I'll show you a picture when I get it all cleared, but that doesn't look like it'll be for a week or two because of the weather. So until then, tight lines, fair winds.